You're listening to the AZ Wildcats podcast brought to you by DraftKings. Great deal going on. You put in a deposit, you can get $1,000 in free plays. All right. Now joined by one of the legends of the Tucson media scene, who is also now wearing a jacket in homage to one of the legends of the coaching scene, Mr. William Brad Allis. Hello, William.
Hello, Michael. I hope I don't overheat.
I was going to say, well, explain to some of the youngsters out there what exactly that jacket signifies.
This is what I would call my Dick Tomey era starter pullover. It actually belongs to my brother. I found it in a box while going through it this weekend. He got the U of A one. I got the Arizona Coyote one, or back then Phoenix Coyotes. But yeah, rocking it when I can. The weather a little warm, but I thought, why not back to the classic Tomey era.
Well, I would not know anything about the hot weather because I'm not currently in Tucson, but I'm letting Brad do that right down there.
It's not even terrible. It's just, when you throw a jacket on in your house and you got the lighting on for the stream. If I pass out, someone call my wife.
Somebody will come and get you. Okay, let's talk some Arizona football here, and the scrimmage. I do believe, and we got to start with Jade and Delora here. Sometimes guys are just gamers. Like when you go to practice, a lot of times Delora doesn't look good. But in the scrimmage, Brad, he looked really good. He was making all the throws. He showed a command of the offense. Is there maybe just something to that? And were maybe people stressing out a little bit and forgetting the fact that this man was the Pac-12 Freshman of the Year last year?
We've seen this twice in Arizona recent history with guys who are just better when the lights came on. And most notably was Nick Foles.
Right.
I was at every practice the year he was battling Matt Scott for the starting job. And Scott was better in practice. I should say better. Scott was more consistent in practice. Mm-hmm. But there was a private scrimmage, and our good friend Kevin Woodman was allowed to attend, couldn't report on it, but he mentioned Foles looked better. It took 3 weeks for him to assume the job that he never gave it up. Khalil Tate was that way as well.
Right.
Tate had that really good spring game where, he was the third quarterback.
Right.
And in Tate's case, I think what it is I think when you're in practice, everything is super structured. And he was a guy who didn't thrive in structure. He was very much a guy who, when things broke down, he was at his best.
Right.
So things don't break down in a very detailed, practice setting. They break down less in a scrimmage than in a real game, but there was opportunities there. And when he got his opportunity, when Dawkins got hurt, and I won't want to say he was playing street ball. That's not accurate. But if the first read wasn't there, he'd take off and run.
Right.
And we know what he could do then. And Delora may be that guy as well, where when you're doing a drop back and you're throwing that same pass 10 times in a row, when you're, running the super scripted plays of a 7-on-7, you don't do as well because sometimes you need that lineman breathing down you. And he wasn't going to get hit in the scrimmage, but sometimes you get that little bit of adrenaline, you get that little bit of fear running through you, and you play better.
Right.
And I think maybe that's what we're seeing in Delora. It also gets maybe a guy who's slowly getting acclimated to this new system. And, the minute anyone struggles, and I'm just as guilty as this of anyone, and someone else like Fafita is playing well, we automatically always long for what, the next guy.
Right.
And I think we did that a little bit. But as I said on my podcast, the minute we start talking about whether Fafita can steal this job, Delora's probably going to go out and have his best practice. What did he do? He had his best practice on Friday and had a really good scrimmage on Saturday, and I think closed a door that may not have even been opened.
All right. You mentioned Noah Fafita, and to me, he's very fascinating because I'm in. I think whenever he does hit the field, I think he's going to be good. He really is about 5'7". He's no taller than me, that's for sure. But when you watch him, Brad, the height doesn't really seem to be a problem. Sure, he gets some passes batted down at the line, but first of all, he's got the best arm on the team. He can move around. His feel for the game is next level. College football, especially at the Power 5 level, has never really seen a guy that size who is going to be winging it possibly 30 times a game. And so that to me is where you're kind of in uncharted waters.
Yeah, I mean, I think the closest comparison would probably be Doug Flutie, but even then, that was a different era of football. I think he probably, what did he throw, 25 times a game?
Right.
So yeah, it'll be very interesting to see what they do. Can they scheme for his lack of size? Do they roll him out? Do they do wider splits? Is Jedd Fisch, who is very NFL motivated, willing to kind of scrap some of that stuff? Because there's a reason, who's the shortest quarterback in the NFL? Kyler?
Right.
Drew Brees. Drew Brees is like a legit 6'1".
Right.
Kyler's probably sub 6 foot, but there's not many. And granted, everyone is bigger, faster, stronger in the NFL. But can Jedd Fisch, who, again, we don't know what kind of offensive coordinator he really is.
Right.
We know what he might be. Can he scheme for Fafita? Because you're going to have to scheme differently. And that's true of most quarterbacks. Very few coaches have a plug-and-play system.
Right.
We mentioned Scott and Foles. They ran different offenses. Not completely different, but they were different elements. Dawkins and even Dawkins and Tate, who were probably closer, ran different versions of that offense. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see, and whether he can see the field this year. My guess is he will play a little bit with the new redshirt rule, but yeah, I think we're looking at the future for Fafita and what can he be.
All right, let's talk about a guy that a lot of people think is related to me, but he's not. Mr. Rayshon Speedy Luke. Now, Brad, when you watch him, again, about 5'8", 165, but he has a next level burst. He has a next that nobody else on the team has. We'll get to Jacob Cowling in a second, but this is different. I can't remember a guy like a Speedy Luke who had functional football speed / elusiveness in there. I mean, we've heard about guys that were supposed to be this. Everybody remembers, Rich Rod always had a 5'2" guy from Florida who he would say was going to be that guy, and he never was. Speedy Luke is that guy, and I can't remember a guy like that in Arizona's history, to be honest with you.
Maybe the closest example might be Northcutt and Mike Thomas.
Right.
Thomas was really fat. People forget. But even then, he was more a solidly built guy, and he became kind of a possession guy. But I think Northcutt may be the closest guy. What'll be interesting to see is how do they use him?
How would you use him?
To me, honestly, I'd use him kind of like Oregon State uses Jacquizz Rodgers at first.
Mm-hmm.
Line him up in the slot, run the jet sweep.
Some D'Anthony Thomas in him?
Yeah. Basically try to find – I'll tell you, a guy you're going to want to watch – again, I always bring it back to the Chiefs. Chiefs drafted a running back out of Rutgers named Isaiah Pacheco, who runs a legit 4.3. They're using him much in I think the same way they're going – the Cats are going to use Speedy Luke, at least this year, and that is more as a receiver. Get him in space, bubble screens, quick screens, in the flat, because you don't want him running between the tackles yet. And right. You may never, to be honest. He may max out about 175, 180, even if he gets pure muscle. And again, you got to find a way to put on the muscle while keeping that functional speed. So he may be a guy you never want rushing the ball 15 times, especially up the middle. Right. But he's a guy, again, jet sweep, bubble screen, running some kind of option outside. But if he's not getting, 10 touches, at least initially, I'd be surprised.
That's where
the guy you want. If you don't have many big play guys, and I don't think they do. I think while they have a very capable receiving core, I'm not sure they have a home run hitter, and that's been true of Arizona football for a long time. So if this guy's your home run hitter, then let's see them use him in a variety of ways.
Yeah, and I agree I would love to see him have all of the kick returning duties as well, because Jacob Cowling to me is the best player on this team. He's not the tallest guy, but I do believe he's probably going to be in the NFL in a year. I would love to, but I don't want to see him necessarily on special teams because I think he's too valuable to the receiving core. I would love to see Speedy get a few carries out of the backfield, 4 or 5 catches per game, and handle all those kick return duties. I think that's a pretty good little role to have for him in this first year.
Yeah, again, and then when he adds muscle, assuming he's capable, and again, that sounds funny, but some guys just can't bulk.
Right.
And he may never be. In which case, as long as you get him stronger at 165, we keep seeing people who confuse weight with size.
Right. Right.
He may carry 165 like a tank. Just like, Jonah Coleman can carry 220 on his frame. Some guys can't do that. A lot of guys can't do that. So let's see what he is a year from now, and then we'll get a better idea. Because, again, you can be perfectly strong and durable at 5'7", 175, 180. Look at Warwick Dunn. He was that size.
Right.
I mean, he was 5'7". I think he was about 180 when he played
180,
in the NFL.
right.
Yeah.
And he
was solid. And maybe that's what Luke ends up being. And if so, great. But yeah, don't hurt him, don't injure him now, because again, he will develop more, and he may hit 20 years old and also put that muscle on.
All right, let me tell you about the DraftKings Sportsbook app, William. Code word PHNX. All right. Now you might think to yourself, William likes the Chiefs. I would 100% say, all right, William, what is the over-under on the Chiefs this year?
I think they're somewhere in that 10 or 11 range.
What do you say?
If it's 10.5, I take the over. If it's 11, I'm probably staying away from it.
All right. Well, William's giving you the advice right there from an insider, a home run hitter. Now, you got to remember here, 21 and up, Arizona only. You got a gambling problem, call 1-800-NEXT-STEP. But again, this is the place to be. You're going to be able to get all the best bets, in-game, futures, everything you need. We got that. Okay. Again, DraftKings Sportsbook app, code word PHNX. All right. Our guy, Sean Seeley, Prince of the East Side, wanted to get your guys' take on the Jedd Fisch is on the hot seat. Jedd Fisch is not on the hot seat. I know you're not saying that, but when Jedd Fisch was hired, it was well understood by all parties that this was a massive rebuild that he was about to undertake. And there is no way that he is on the hot seat, especially with all the goodwill that he's built and the recruiting that he's making in inroads. Nobody should have expected Arizona to be getting 9 wins in his second season.
No, and I look at this, and I did address this on my podcast, Sean, if you haven't checked it out yet. I know you're pretty loyal. So he could wind up on the hot seat. If Arizona goes out and just lays an egg this season and looks no better than they did last year, then I could see him being on the hot seat. But I think the only way he gets fired is if they absolutely lay an egg and there's a major scandal. Because First of all, everyone knows this is a major rebuilding process. Secondly, they can't afford it. You're still paying off 2 other coaches.
Well put.
Maybe they're done paying Rich Rod. I don't think they are, though.
Right.
And you
just came off the books.
Yeah, and then Sumlin. So again, if they go out and go 1-11 this year and are getting blown out, yeah. But in reality, you're just, even some of the biggest detractors, if they get 3 wins but look good doing it, then I'm going to be happy. Maybe not thrilled, but happy. I know a lot of people are hoping they can get to that 5, 6, 7, and I think that'll be difficult. But again, if they win 3 games and look good and look better and continue to do what they did last year, and that's get better throughout the season, then I think, the program's moving in the right direction. And again, if they go 0-12, then maybe we're talking about, because I think it'd be really hard to have a program that wins 1 football game in 3 years. But I don't foresee that happening either. What
are your expectations for Jacob Cowling this year?
I think he's the number 1 receiver. Yeah, I think he'll be hard pressed to put up the same numbers for a couple reasons.
Right.
1, he's got more receiver talent around him. 2, level of competition. UTEP's schedule was UTEP's schedule. And 3, I think defenses will definitely be keying on him.
Right.
But, if he can flirt with 1,000 yards, I think that's big. And if he can get to 1,100 yards, that's fantastic. A lot of it's going to be how good is Arizona's offense. Obviously he's surrounded with more talent than UTEP had, but he's not playing North Texas. He's not playing UT.
He's not playing Abilene Christian anymore. No. Right. One thing that was fascinating. Now, let me ask you this. I look at this offensive line, and I'm okay with the starting 5, whether it's Jordan Morgan, Peyton Fears, Baker, Donovan, and Savanea. My concern, though, is that there really isn't much depth behind it. Now, I think a guy like Leaf Magnuson can play in time, but right now, those 5 guys, they have to stay healthy, Brad.
At the very least, what you still need to do is you need to find a swing tackle and a swing guard.
Right.
And for people not necessarily familiar with those terms, because they don't get used probably enough, basically you need a guy who can go in and play either tackle position off the bench.
Right.
Or can play one and then, your other tackle moves over. You need a guy who can play the interior. He may not be your backup center, but can go and play either guard spot in case the guy goes down. if you have 7 linemen and you can keep them healthy, then you have enough. If you have less than that, you're in big trouble. If you have more, great. But we all know how hard it is to find quality linemen these days. So Arizona, yeah, but that's what they need. They need to find 2 guys on the bench who can provide those swing positions. And in which case, then you have to hope you remain healthy.
Right. And if you remain healthy, then hopefully you're good. Now let's move over to the defensive side. Am I drinking the Kool-Aid being that I actually think Arizona's D-line for the first time in quite a while, I'm not going to say they're great, but I think there are some pieces to work with there. And obviously it starts with Keon Bars, who 5 sacks in 10 games last year. Hunter Echols has gotten rave reviews. If they can get something out of Jalen Harris, obviously more consistency. Am I wrong in thinking that this could be a decent unit?
No, I don't think so. And I think what I kind of like from this unit is there appears to be the potential to have 2 really good rush ends.
Right.
And depth on the interior defensive line. You mentioned Bars. They've got the transfers from UCLA. They're running a lot of young guys out there. If you can find 5 or 6 interior defensive linemen and keep them rotated and fresh, that's huge. Because, again, we've seen Arizona. That may be the biggest position of need since Tomey.
Right.
How many times are we converting a tight end to defensive tackle?
The only time I ever felt comfortable with the D outside of Tomey was Stoops, where you had the year when you had Elmore and Brooks Reed, and I believe Earl Mitchell was in there as well.
Even then, they were a little weaker up the middle. That was, they had the 3 NFL defensive ends that year.
Right.
They had
DeAndre Reed too.
DeAndre Reed as well. And then you had Earl Mitchell, who, again, what he carved out a 12-year NFL career. But beyond that, you had 1 or 2 other solid defensive linemen. I want to say, who was the kid? He was the high school teammate of Mike Thomas. I can't think of his name. Really good kid, who was a solid player in the middle, but you didn't have any depth.
Right.
Why can't I think of his name?
I can't think of it either.
Oh yeah, we actually got to be pretty he liked my questions, so he would search me out on media days and didn't have to talk to anyone else. And now I can't think of his name, and I feel like a scumbag. But yeah, but they had a few guys, but they didn't have depth. Earl Mitchell was playing 60% of the snaps.
Right.
But yeah, you're right. Other than that, it's been few and far between. Just look at, how many do they have any defensive linemen? When was the last time they had a defensive lineman in the NFL? I think it was Mitchell and Brooks Reed.
And I think that's the and Sean, we'll get to your question in just a second. It's a very good question. I think Keon Bars is honestly the first guy that I think has some NFL potential on that D line in quite a long time, to be honest with you. And I think this entire D line is going to basically go off what he does. You got to remember too, last year, people forget that he, force is an overused term at times, but he was a problem for defenses towards the end, or offenses towards the end of the year.
The one thing is, if you have a quality defensive tackle, it changes how teams have to block you.
Right.
Look at the Rams. And again, I'm not comparing them to Jason Donald.
You can be honest with, if you think we have the next Aaron Donald.
No, I don't. But
break it right here.
But if you have a guy who automatically eats up 2 blocks and you've got to worry about him getting to your quarterback, throw in a guy like Chris Jones in Kansas City. I'm not talking the run plugging D tackle, but guys who could actually get in and make plays. And again, having a 350-pounder who can just clog up the middle works great. But if you have a guy who can actually wreak havoc in the backfield, then suddenly you can't focus as much on the outside pass rush.
Right.
And it makes everyone better. So if he can be a guy, again, if he can duplicate 5-6 sacks, 10 tackles for loss, maybe, that's going to open things up, especially if suddenly you've got Harris and Echols being above average pass rushers, because then you've got to focus on 3 guys. And then if they decide to blitz, suddenly it really opens up a lot of avenues, as opposed to, we've seen a lot of schemes that, you've got the run stopping end, you've got the, run stopping D tackles, and you're hoping your one defensive end and your blitz package can get to the quarterback. And for Arizona, as we've seen more often than not, that hasn't worked the last decade.
All right, let's talk about the back 7 here in just a second. But again, Foco, the number one officially merchandise sports paraphernalia going on. Check it out, foco.com. Brandon Sanders wears stuff from Foco, and if it's cool enough for one of the hardest hitters in school history, it's cool enough for you. Check it out, Foco. And a reminder that Four Peaks Brewery is the official brewery of PHNX. Check it out. Good raffles, all kinds of stuff right there. Good stuff. All right, back 7 here, because Arizona's going to be running a 4-2-5. You hear a lot about Christian Young and and Sean, we'll get to that in just a second. I apologize. But you hear a lot about Christian Young. What do you expect? Who do you need to be those game breakers next season for, this season for Arizona to make a difference?
They need competency at the cornerback position.
Right.
My guess is you're going to need at least one of the 2 freshmen to step up. And when I'm talking, I know they brought in more than 2 freshmen, but I'm talking Takario Davis and Ephesian Prysock. I hope I pronounced that right.
No, you got it. You got it.
Because you combine those guys with Stukes, with the other 2 guys, and if you can get competency, because I don't think they're very deep at safety.
Right.
I don't know how talented. You mentioned Young, and but I don't know, man. There's a reason you have 5 committed defensive backs already, and they may bring in 8 or 9.
Right.
And I know they got some upperclassmen who are leaving, but
no, I'm the same way.
They already had to move Gunnar Maldonado to nickel. So if you can't cover, then you better have an elite pass rush. And I don't think this is an elite pass rush. Right. I think they have the ability to be a good pass rush, which helps as well. But yeah, if you can get at least one of the 2 young corners to come in and play at a higher level than they got last year, then I think you've got the chance for this to be, again, a competent middle of the pack defense. Which I think the best case scenario.
All right, let's ask. We're going to talk a little bit of hoops here now, but Sean Seeley says, I know Fisch put an ad in the paper about wanting $50,000 for the home opener. Do you see that happening? No, unfortunately, I think that Arizona fans, there will be people that will show for sure, but I think Arizona fans are in a wait and see approach.
What if, and again, I don't necessarily believe it,
San Diego State
42-10. What if Cowling has 250 yards or are there now? Is there enough savvy Arizona fans who are going? Is there enough casual Arizona fans who are going to notice and care enough? And I don't know. I don't feel like I have my finger on the pulse of the average fan anymore.
Right. But you are the average fan, Brad.
I don't think I am the average fan. I think I am. I think I would hope I would be the exceptional fan, except because I deal with people like Sean and with your cast and the people who listen to my podcast. And frankly, I work from home 3 days a week, and when I am in the office, there's only 2 guys who talk football. So I don't know what the general community feels anymore about Arizona football. My guess is a lot of them are burned out on it. So you may win 70-14, and not enough people would care to get 50,000 yet. In years past, I think you could have won 21-20 and you would have gotten 50,000 or close.
Right.
To it. But I think if this team starts to win and does it in an exciting fashion, I hope you see a lot of fans. But, we're also living in a different era. And I hate to say it, but, having kids of my own now, I'm going to have night baseball games I have to coach this year.
Right.
You used to have AYSO games in the day. You've got really good TV coverage sometimes. I understand that, it's not as easy, I don't think.
It's easier to watch the game from home now than it's ever been, especially when you have a family and the kids have to be in bed by 8:00 or they have to be up early, whatever the case may be. It's just easier. And that's always going to be, that's just going to be the way it is.
Yeah. Now, if you put a really good product on the field, you make the game day atmosphere entertaining. And unfortunately, I don't mean singing Journey songs between quarters.
Yes, we're on the same page.
Again, there's nothing like going to a college football. And frankly, this is part of, I think, the dilemma you get for guys like us. What do you want from a college football game? I want a pep band the whole time. I want to hear. I don't want you blaring cougar noises over the PA. I don't need stuff on the video screen. I want college football. That's why when I haven't done it in a few. There was something about a Friday night, a crisp, cool Friday night going to the local high school, and the pep band's playing, and the alums are on the sideline, and the kids are. There's just something about live football because you want to differentiate it from the NFL.
Right. For sure.
There's something magic about a drum line on a Saturday afternoon. This was my favorite part about going to the U of A. You'd be the drum line. You could hear it all over campus while they were warming up. So, and maybe I'm not the right person for that anymore, but that's what I want from college football. I don't need helmet races, but my kids do. So it's a weird dichotomy, but I want to get out to as many games as I can get out to this year. And hopefully there's a good, fun product to see.
All right, let's talk a little bit of Arizona basketball here before we sign off in just a second. But again, the DraftKings Sportsbook app, code word PHNX. You put down a deposit, you get up to $1,000 in free plays. William likes the over of Chiefs 11 wins. I don't even know if that's the number or not, but if that is the number, check it out right there. I'm back in the A of over 2.5 wins. William is back in the A of over 2.5 wins, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so we're both back in the A there. Now, listen, a lot of people probably think I'm stupid, but nobody out there thinks that we're both stupid. So again, back the A right there. Again, 21 and up, Arizona only. Gambling problem, call 1-800-NEXT-STEP. They'll get you all taken care of. Okay, Arizona basketball this year. I want to ask you about a couple players here first and foremost. Azuolas Tubelis, can he be an All-American this year for Arizona? And a legitimate All-American where people look around and you're like, yeah, that's one of the 15 best players in the country.
I think he can, because we've seen glimpses of it.
Right.
And people forget, again, had Arizona maybe made a deeper run, we might forget how good the first part of the season was for him.
Right.
So he got hurt. And, it reminds me a lot of, in a totally different circumstances, Hassan Adams' senior year. Mm-hmm. Where Hassan Adams, scoring average dropped 7 points a game down the final month of the season, which is really hard to do statistically. But Tubelis, was a guy who at one point was, we forgot because he's steady. Mm-hmm. Because once Koloko and Terry emerged, Koloko scores 8 points and they're all big dunks, or, you're so excited for the kid. You forget that Tubelis had 8 as well, because his are boring usually.
Right.
It's a putback. It's big man moves. It's kind of like
he's not skying in and dunking over people and all that.
Yeah,
right.
I mean, how many times did you look up and suddenly Channing Frye had 12?
Yeah,
Frye was, because again, we all remember Frye shooting threes in the NBA. He didn't at Arizona. He was
right.
Suddenly you're like, oh, Frye has 14 and 8. I had no idea.
Sure.
Because why? Jason Gardner was jacking up threes and Salim was being Salim.
Right.
And Walton was no look passing and Ricky Anderson was taunting the crowd or whatever. Same thing here. Koloko's all arms and legs with block shots to the fifth row. Matherin was special. Terry was doing everything. Kirk Kriisa was getting phone numbers from opposing cheerleaders, whatever it was.
Right.
But yeah, Tubelis is a guy who could easily average 18 and 9 this year and maybe be the most boring guy in America doing it.
Let me ask you one more guy before we sign off here. Cedric Henderson comes in from Campbell. Again, it's Campbell University. I get that. Played really well against Duke. Has an NBA pedigree and is, from his father. What are you looking for from him this year? What do you expect from him?
That's, I think, a very good question, because I still don't know what he is.
Right.
Is he going to be the undersized power forward off the bench? Is he a wing? I thought he was closer to 6'8", 6'9", but now I see a lot of places listing him at 6'6", 6'7".
Right.
So he's not as big as somehow I thought he was, and maybe that's my own mistake, or maybe, I don't know, there's revisionist history. But yeah, I think he is a guy who I think he will play the 4 when they go small. I think he can give you spot minutes at the 3. Obviously, he's going to play because you don't bring in a guy like that. But if Adama Ball's the real deal,
right?
And if
that's where it gets fascinating.
If Pelle Larsson's better, and if Henry Vieser's the real deal, you're fighting for minutes now.
You're fighting for minutes, and there's not a lot of minutes to go around at that point, which is obviously a good problem to have.
Yeah. So if you tell me he's going to be 4th on the team in scoring, being the number 1 guy off the bench, I'd believe it. And if you tell me he winds up being the 9th guy in an 8.5-man rotation, unfortunately, I think I'd believe it. So probably somewhere in between.
Brad, As always, can't thank you enough for coming on, my man. Appreciate you. And just so everybody out there knows, Brad's going to be on post games with Shu and I when he can, when schedule permits. Obviously, got the parenting duties to come first.
We got fall ball, we got volleyball. I think volleyball games will be over early enough, but yeah, fall ball, baseball. We're trying to get the games scheduled earlier this year because they were all 7:30 last year on the Saturday, even though the fields were open.
Gross.
So, yeah, we're gonna try and do that. And if not, I'll just jump on and harass you guys like I used to last year.
Appreciate you, Brad, man. We'll talk to you soon, buddy.
I gotta get this jacket off. I think I've lost 3 pounds in water weight.
I've got to get out,
or maybe I'll keep it off.
You do that. I'm going to get out to the lake.
What's the over and under on geese you fight?
Dude, it's amazing. I had no clue that there were geese everywhere. And so I went up to a lady on the beach and I said, "Are these ducks or geese?" And she rolls her eyes and she says, "Yes, they're geese, and yes, they're problems." And so yeah, they suck. There's no other way around it.
I have a feeling you're going viral, like fighting geese.
No, and you know what?
I'll be the first UFC.
I know, and you know what, Brad? If that happens,
Ultimate Foul Championship.
Yeah, Ultimate Foul Championship, garbage. On that note,
can I go to DraftKings for that? I'm taking the geese minus 250.
He's Brad Ellis. I'm Mike Luke. You've been listening to AZ Wildcats podcast.